Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the AdvisorPro Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Anna Frazzetto, a leader in revenue growth, digital transformation, and mentoring. So, Anna is the CEO of AFM Strategic Partners, 7x member of the Global 150 Women in Staffing list, and an absolute resilience advocate. Anna, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. Welcome to our fledgling show. You're one of our top 10 first choices to reach out to.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Colin. Excited to be here today and can't wait to start the conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. So look, before we dive in, Anna, look, I like to kind of do a bit of an icebreaker, one of those cheesy icebreakers. So give us a surprising fact people don't know about you. Please make it that you haven't been to a Coldplay concert recently.
Oh my God, is that not that is amazing. First of all the memes that have come out with that is just remarkable. I think I'm having more fun. There was one that it showed a Burger King hugging Ronald McDonald as they're having an affair. I love it. But okay, something you don't know about me. I'm not sure if it's well known, but I speak 3 languages, maybe 4 languages. I speak Italian. I speak Sicilian, which really is a very different language because it's based in Arabic root, and Spanish and English. Yeah.
I was just about to try and say something very insightful in Spanish then, and it's completely escaped me. But thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And you've been at baseball all weekend, right?
Yes, I have. I have one of the kids in the family is at a tournament at Cooperstown, which is like the birthplace of baseball.
Good stuff. So our whole thing today is all about resilience meets business growth. So when you launched AFM Strategic Partners, you've been in high profile roles, you've been in global tech staffing. What was the rationale? Did you fall into it, or was there a conscious
Right. So it's interesting. Most people would say I probably picked the worst time possible to start a business because 2024 was definitely not a very stable year. There was a lot of uncertainty, especially in the US with the upcoming election and what was going to happen. And the election has not necessarily added clarity because we still have a lot of uncertainty in the world. But starting my own business has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. Actually, what kind of sparked the interest is when I started taking a look at my career, and probably in the last, oh my God, 1.5 decades, let's say, as you advance in your career, you start working on, I mean, you have like these great titles, right? Global Chief Revenue Officer, President of US and Asia Pac operations, or whatever your title is. But you start working on, if you look at your day, you really start looking at, you're probably spending, if you're lucky, maybe 50% of your day on the activities that you really love. You do get into this black hole of operational, administrative problem solving, but not good problem solving, not client problem solving, but like internal stuff. And it just becomes a drain. At least for me, it was a drain because I wasn't working on the things that I wanted to work on. So I started the company with the intention that I could provide fractional CRO or CSO support to an organization. And I like the fact that I can strategically come in and then get out.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I've loved that transition myself as well. Having the ability, I guess, to help more people. That's what I love. Do you find yourself managing multiple clients? What's your strategy there?
So I'm very organized. That's one thing that I'm grateful for. I won't tell anyone, but I'm super organized. So I keep track. I have separate digital folders and also paper documentation that separates each of the clients. But I enjoy the balance because I have a portfolio that has different size companies. And I've had the opportunity to introduce some of my clients to my other clients, right? So then you can knowledge share that way. And I think there's a great benefit in that. I like the variety also. I find that very exciting because you have people at different stages in their growth cycle. And there's a lot that they can learn, not only from me, but then when I pair them with one of my other clients, right? Which makes it a lot of fun.
Exactly. Did you find because of course you were probably looked after and in a bubble in corporate, as I was as well. And I don't think I paid for anything for almost 8 years. It's like this was incredible. But anyway, how did you find that transition from being maybe in that, I was in that bubble, certainly. I'm not saying you were, but all of a sudden you're in a business and you're having to find your own leads and you're having to kind of then, you're the product. And all of a sudden you're not used to being the product. You're used to someone else's product, and it's kind of easier selling someone else's product. How did you find that transition?
So that's an interesting question, because I think you kind of touch on a couple of things. On the expense side, I always managed a P&L, so therefore I was rewarded on how well I managed the expenses. So I kind of have been trained to be really cautious with, how you spend your money. So I find that transition really wasn't a big transition for me. But the selling yourself part, what's interesting about that is I'm a salesperson at heart. I always love selling, but it's when somebody is not interested, because now it becomes a little bit more personal, right? Because before, if I'm selling a shiny apple, right, I can show the client the apple and say, look at this apple. Isn't it a beautiful apple? Don't you want this apple? Do you
Sell me
have
this
this
pen.
apple?
Sell me this pen.
Right, exactly. And then if the client says, no, I'm really not an apple person, I'm an orange person, it's kind of like you walk away and you go, okay, I lost that deal, but now you kind of move on to the next one. But now if it's I'm selling AFM Strategic Partners services, and a client is like, yeah, not really looking to spend money there. It's a
Yeah.
little bit like,
Ouch.
you don't see me as value. So that's the
Yeah.
biggest transition, I think, is really kind of having the right mindset. But what I train salespeople on all the time is the concept. Did you ever watch Ted Lasso?
Absolutely. It was filmed up the road.
Okay, so fantastic. Be a guppy. You have to be a guppy. You
Okay.
have to have a short term. So if somebody rejects you, and even if it feels personal or not personal, I always have to remind myself and say, be a guppy. You wake up the next day, or you
Yeah.
walk around the block a couple of times, and then you come back and go, nope, I'm going to try it again.
Absolutely. And that's, I guess, comes into that resilience that we build as salespeople from the start. I mean, my journey was, I had a business first and then I turned into a sales guy,
Ah,
which was kind of all the wrong way round, really, with hindsight, because I got ripped off by absolutely everyone out of room, believe me. But that resilience, what was it? It's just kind of walk forward, walk towards the fire, just kind of get it done, get it done. And it's seen me through some really tough situations, both personally as well as professionally. And yeah, I don't think I'd swap those experiences, because I don't think the vast majority of people get rejected on a hour by hour basis like we potentially do.
yeah, exactly. And also, if you think about it, like you have clients, as you can imagine, that have a start and an end as far as, the business opportunity, or because of financial restrictions on their part, they might have to terminate the arrangement earlier than anticipated. But
Yeah.
those are all things that you have to kind of relate to. That's
Mm.
the ebb and flow of business. It's not a personal item that's taking place, towards you or against you or anything like that. But yeah, it's been a great journey. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'm having a great time at it. And I think the times when you have downtime, it's a great time for you to spend on the business,
Mm.
because if you think about it, when you have too many clients and you're fully billable, it becomes very difficult for you to say, let me take a pause. What else should I be doing, either on the marketing front, or what podcast should I be on, or what, right? Like you need to kind of have that balance.
Exactly. It's so difficult. The on the business versus in the business. It's so easy to get pulled into, of course, client work. I love client work. I love trying to help, the outcome and all the experience that you've got, I've got. I know that we can make massive differences to their business. They don't always know that. And so there is that positioning. And I do find myself, of course, selling, because naturally I'm trying to sell, but I'm not trying to oversell. I'm trying to always create that environment where it's logically, it's got to be their only choice, surely, because what they're doing currently isn't working.
Right. And you know what? And I love what you just uncovered. I think also another great nugget as far as what we do for a living. Often it becomes very easy for you to be able to see what the client needs. And they're in it And often they can't see it because one, they're going to look at the expense. So, whatever your hourly rate is, and they're going to say, even though
Oh,
in the big scheme of things, it's not a huge expense, but then they're like, "Oh, I don't know, is it worth me spending money here? Should I just try harder with the current sales team?" And they're in this point of not being able to make a decision
mm,
quick enough. And meanwhile, you feel like, oh my goodness, this is so obvious to me
yeah,
how I can step in and help
yeah.
you in the first 6 months and you're going to see a turnaround, kind of thing.
Absolutely. And to go back to your Ted Lasso, that whole story there, very often in coaching calls, I talk about trying to put the advisor in front of goal to score goals, but they can't play in goal and in midfield and on the wing and manage the team. So you
Right.
need this kind of environment around you. So you do need to build yourself a little bubble if you're going to be the almost like the solopreneur, the individual, who's going to be in front of goals. Who's going to give you the ball? Because you can't, it's very difficult to juggle all these different client engagements and keep an eye on what's coming in through the top of the funnel as well.
And how often, I'm sure you probably see this a lot. How often do you see companies that they make it to 20 million or they make it to 30 million, but then they plateau and they
Yeah.
can't get past and they're wondering what, like I got from zero to, to 10 to zero to 20, zero to 30
Mm,
rather easily. But
mm.
now why can't I
Yeah.
break that ceiling? And
Yeah.
it's because the foundation
Yeah.
hasn't been set correctly
Absolutely.
from my perspective, right? So some of it could be they want a really large client and
Mm,
therefore it led them to have great success rather quickly and
mm.
they grew the business that way. Others, it could be that they had, again, they landed some great opportunities that kind of got them there. But then if you haven't built the right foundation, again,
Yeah.
I equate it to, like building a house, right? If,
Yeah.
if you're building a house on a foundation that has a little bit of a crack in it, it's not going to stay standing for a long time. And that's where you need that outside help that can come in
Absolutely.
and say, okay, I'm going to fix my foundation. I'm going to seal up all the cracks and
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to building up. But that takes investment,
Mm.
which is definitely it's what's the expression, don't be penny wise a dollar foolish, right?
Yeah.
Because you're cutting corners here but then
That's
you're
right.
not looking at the big picture.
Did you feel sometimes like in order to get to that foundation, you have to knock down the whole building first? And, I mean, that leads then to cultural issues and challenges. But sometimes that whole culture can be ever so slightly poisoned, shall we say, or that, something really seriously wrong in that business and getting right back into the basics. I've found in the past, really does work. Tough gig, but what do you think?
Absolutely. It is a tough gig. And sometimes it's having the right person on the right seat on the bus, right? So one of the things that often I'll do is from a sales assessment is, taking a look at the sales team. Do we have the right people that are selling? And
Yeah.
often you'll find that a more seasoned salesperson who's very fixed in their way of
Mm.
sales, they kind of plateaued because they're happy with their living and therefore they're not doing the best service to that particular client base that they're supporting. And it becomes a little bit like, okay, how do you spark the fire
Yeah.
in that person's belly? And if it's not going to be sparked, how do you transition? Because now that becomes a scary thought. I have
Mm.
one of my most successful salespeople,
Mm.
but they're not moving forward. And it's creating a little bit of a stall for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, how do you balance that?
Because they're looking at this superstar salesperson who's overachieved, and they're sitting around, they're playing golf, they're playing squash, whatever they're doing, and
Right.
it's working for them. So it kind of does trickle down, or trickles across the organization. But definitely, definitely, definitely. So
Right.
maybe the message there is get back to basics, do the proper thing, do the hard yards. Focus on the client, focus on the outcome. Try to, I don't know, I try to help people not focus necessarily. Maybe look, I'll get bagged for this. Don't necessarily focus right now on the number right now. Focus on doing the right thing. And if you've got trust in the organization, or the organization, more importantly, has got trust in you, then they'll back you to get the proper foundations in place. But that might not be 1 quarter shot.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. I think that's always the hardest thing to try to sell, right? Is to say, hang on a second, let's reevaluate. This might we might have to slow down before we can go fast
Yeah.
again, especially if they're struggling and they've had maybe 1, 2, 3 quarters that have not been in the positive. And now you tell them, hang on a second, let's just stall a little bit longer. That definitely becomes a hard sell. But I have to tell you, it's go slow to go fast,
Right.
right? So you need to
100%.
kind of take that into account. Definitely go slow to go fast.
100%. Something that I've been using for years and years and years and years, and I'm sure you have too. This whole kind of beachhead strategy, the land and expand, but then in different models. I always call it the San Francisco model. It breaks every time. I don't know why. In fact, maybe we can talk it through, because I find that some superstar salesperson goes in and does the deal. That's the beachhead, and then the deal's passed over to technical people to try and expand. I'm like, why have you put a customer success person in there who's not a salesperson, when the majority of this business is actually, that is still to be won? I never got it, never understood, and I fought against it in every single one of those situations I've been in. What's your view?
Right. So land and expand is one of the greatest, techniques or whatever that I talk to salespeople all the time, especially during tougher economic times. I always say, take a look at the book of business you have already, and are we getting the most wallet share out of those clients? And that can be difficult. So now there's a couple of different philosophies as far as, hunters and farmers, right? Who's going to be the hunter? So the hunter is going to be who's going to establish the beachhead. But I always like to have that hunter engaged for a period of time until they start. So you described like the beachhead kind of coming to an angle like this, where you can at least take care of the top part of that beachhead. And because the salesperson is going to have the mindset of being able to look at the organizational chart, who is to the left and to the right, who else do I need to get to know? And then I would introduce a farmer, right? Where a farmer, once the relationships are established, the farmer then can work with farming whatever activity that they currently have going on, but not a technical sales support person, because they are technical. I've been a technical sales support person in my career, and it is a different type of mentality. Sales is not what drives you first. It's more the technical solution. So it's really more, how do you organize the account, and what's the time period that you have the hunter own the account before you bring in a farmer into the account. Now, some companies that I've worked with, they have an official transition where the hunter only gets to keep the account for the first, 6 to 12 months, depending on the size of the company. And then it gets turned over to farmers. And the only way the hunter gets brought back in is if there's like a new product launch in this account, or there's a new division being built. And then the hunter comes in to try to sell into that part of the business. And then the farmer kind of keeps it. Now, there are some other clients which has the hunter engaged always, right? But then you bring in the farmers, and then the hunter just has that like relationship part that they kind of manage at the top level, which I think there's a lot of value to that by keeping it that way. I know myself personally, when I carried my own book of business, I liked to be engaged with my accounts forever. Right. So when I had a manager once come to me and say, okay, so now you're going to turn it over. I'm like, oh, no. This is mine. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's one of the things I found most difficult about then going up the tree in terms of, or the slippery pole in terms of, like senior leadership and things like that. I was getting further and further away from the customer, or I was wheeled out to have a interesting conversation, I thought, with a customer to try and close something, as opposed to being at the cold face trying to do things. So I guess that taught me a lot about what I enjoy. It's not really the management for me of the sales process, or asking people the same old questions. It's about getting in there, and when I'm in that mode, and I do a lot of different things, but sleeves rolled up, and I'm in there trying to close deals, of course. Hey, so You also do a tip of the day series, don't you?
Yes, I do. I started that. It's interesting. I started that probably, I thought it would be a good way to kind of, illustrate capabilities, but also kind of service the market and give a little bit of a sales tip of the day. And
Mm.
I did like 50 in a row every
Wow.
day. Yeah, Monday through Friday. I wouldn't post on the weekend, Monday through Friday. And then I kind of stopped because I was like, okay, first of all, I was busy work wise, and I kind of stopped and figure like how much longer can I keep doing this. But then I started getting instant messages and
Great.
little pokes as far as saying, Anna, what happens to sales tip of the day? Are you not going to do it anymore? I'm thinking to myself,
Wow.
my goodness, okay. So I started up again. I think I'm up to 60. I just posted 60 today, but I'll keep it going for a little bit, and then we'll see where that takes us.
I'm going to be on your subscription list like immediately. Hey, look, I've been asked to kind of give you some rapid fire questions. Ready?
Okay.
Okay. Best leadership book and or sales book.
Oh my goodness, I love Simon Sinek,
Mm.
and it's Leaders Eat Last, I think is the
Ooh.
title of the
Okay.
book. Great book, very insightful, and I think it also goes into the psychology of human behavior, which I kind of liked, talking about how some people are more addicted to adrenaline versus, what kind of personalities. It really was a great read.
Okay. I'll add that to the list there. Next one. Ready? Favorite daily habit for resilience.
My journal. I have a gratuity journal that I do every morning, and it's the way I start my day. Used to years ago, I would start where immediately I'm looking at my cell phone, right? And I'm kind of, okay, what's going on? What's going on? Especially when I provided international support, I would wake up in the morning, I'm like, what's going on in Asia Pac? Right.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that I would think of. And I think for mental health, it's really helped me to do the gratuity journal. I
Mm.
do that. I meditate, and then I get up, I shower, get dressed, and then I have breakfast, and then I'll look at email and get started because I want to make sure I'm 100% before approaching the day.
Laughing because I'm deep in the former definition of I guess of chaos. I'm deep in there right now, but I'm hoping to get to the latter very
Yeah.
soon. A sales tool you can't live without.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Miller Hyman as one of the sales strategies and techniques, but they had this blue sheet. They called it a blue sheet because years ago,
Mm.
it was actually kind of funny. There would be these giant pads that was a blue sheet. So the name kind of stuck. Now you can do it digitally and you have it online. What I loved about that sales tool is that it helped organize your strategy for a client. So therefore, it would tell me who the influencer is, your coach, your blocker, what are my strengths and weaknesses in the account, what obstacles do I have, what threats, what competitive threats do I have, and then it's like building almost a little bit of a war plan on
Yeah.
how am I going to tackle this particular client. So blue sheeting to me is a staple.
Love that. Love that. Excellent. Thank you very much. And in terms of just as we wrap up, look, I could talk to you for hours, but that's not fair. In terms of some advice for new advisors, new coaches, non-exec directors, transitioning out of that big role, just as you've done, just as I've done. I mean, they get it from me on a regular basis, but one of the points of this is to try and get outside voices in terms of almost like you can do it, or maybe you can't do it. What's maybe a couple of bits of advice you give?
I think that transition from going to corporate to now being an individual contributor or trying to help a client, I think the biggest thing is not to jump to conclusions. So, therefore, it's listening, right? Really diligently listening to what the issues and the challenges are. Actually, I think earlier on in the podcast, we were talking about how you can hear a person talk and you immediately know, like, I know how to fix this problem. But I think what you need to do is you really need to kind of hit the pause button and then be able to truly absorb what's happening, what's being said, listen diligently, think about it, digest it, and then articulate what a direction could possibly be. I think this gives credibility to you as an individual, either as a coach, as a consultant, as an advisor. But more importantly, I think it also makes you provide a more rounded solution because you've taken that extra time to go through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, well said. Well said. The whole listening thing, I get so keen about the technology that we've built in our business, about how it could affect people's advisory practice, their whole thing, their coaching practice. And sometimes I just have to, just tie my hands to the chair, zip my, and just let them talk.
Oh my goodness, that is so true. It's so funny. Former CEO that I worked for would say, visibly, Anna, I could tell you are chomping at the bit to say something
Yeah.
because I'm literally like, oh my God, I can't wait to jump in and
Yeah.
explain something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to take that, that's why I always say, take the
Exactly.
pause and then jump in.
Anna, it's been wonderful to have you on, and I wish you all the very, very best. And of course, we're going to stay in touch, and I'd love to check out what's going on in your world and with the business, absolutely on a regular basis. So, Anna, lovely to meet you, and yeah, and this has been the Advisor Pro podcast.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Colin. It was fantastic being on your show.